All right, I want to bring in Jenny Horne now. We're going to take things micro. We've got Apple in the headlines this morning, facing some headwinds out of the EU. What's the latest there, Jenny?
I know, and it seems like this is just the story that keeps giving, frankly, when it comes to the Apple scrutiny regarding, from the EU, basically. But the European Commission did say Monday it has found, preliminary at least, that Apple's App Store violated the overall Digital Markets Act by preventing app developers from steering customers to other channels to offer various content and overall offers. The EU law does require that Apple's developers on the App Store must disclose alternative and potentially less expensive purchasing options. So Apple's current rules for developers should be listed on the App Store, and they are not able to provide this pricing information within the app or communicate in any other way. Their customers must be obviously given these alternative options, according to the EU regulators. The findings, of course, were still preliminary, but the Commission did say that Apple has the possibility to exercise its rights of defense. If the preliminary allegations stand, the Commission will decide by March 25th of 2025, and the Commission can impose fines of up to 10% on the company's worldwide revenue and up to around 20% in the case of repeated violations. So overall, I think this is pretty major, but it's also, we're not going to get that decision for now about a year at this point. So this is, to me, one of those classic stories where we hear major, and basically regulatory bodies going after a name like Apple. Of course, Apple's one that faces a lot of scrutiny. Meta's another one, Alphabet. But I have to say, it's a lot of times a wait-and-see story. It's not something that's like an immediate, obviously, headwind for the overall shares. Now, the developers community and consumers are eager to offer alternatives to the App Store, is what we did hear from the European Commission. And they said they will investigate to ensure that Apple does not undermine these efforts. The Commission also has said it has launched another probe of the company over allegations that its newly updated requirements for these third-party app developers on the App Store are not in compliance with the Digital Markets Act by charging companies unreasonable fees. They've also been examining whether Apple has made it too much to install and download other app stores or various apps on the iPhone. So I think the Digital Markets Act has shown us that it's definitely going after some of these mega cap names, and what that obviously means for Apple is they've got to be extremely compliant. And so far, actually, the EU has been a huge reason. Now we have this USB-C cables, of course, to charge in the universal charging system. I'm a huge fan. So I'm like, in any ways in which that we can feel like we are gaining the proper access to all of the competition out there, I think is a win for us as consumers. Less of a win, of course, for a name like Apple, which this is a major portion of their money, but it's still not the bread and butter. iPhone sales still dominate what we see from their various fees and services. But that's also still definitely going to be a more long-term story, I think, that we have to keep on our radar.
Yeah, I do think this is a long-term story, especially when you think about the EU, when how it looks to crack down on big tech. It's been going after big tech for a while. It has a lot of issues with how it operates within the EU. There's just, in a lot of different areas of industry, there's more layers of regulation around, say, the tech sector, et cetera. Is there anything else that stood out to you from this latest move, Jenny?
So I kind of like this news we got that Apple is, of course, teaming up with Meta for various AI offerings, because to me that is like a match made in heaven. Maybe it's just like my world, but the two seem to me like a pretty probable, if not an easy partnership to understand. So, and of course, an effort to catch up with their AI, Apple could be, of course, turning to longtime rival Meta platforms. This is according to the Wall Street Journal, but Meta has been holding discussions with Apple about integrating Meta Platform's generative AI model into Apple Intelligence. And of course, what we do know with this matter is it's still pretty preliminary. We've only gotten reports out of the Wall Street Journal, but they said that this is going to be something that could just only expand on their overall Apple Intelligence offerings, which was just recently announced at WWDC. So I'm curious what that looks like, because again, I think that there's a lot of iPhones where I'd be willing to bet there's at least one of Meta's apps. Like the relationship is already kind of coexisting. I don't even know if I would necessarily say that they were rivals until the Vision Pro, of course, did put them sort of at head-to-head with each other. But nonetheless, I think that this is something that is like a consumer, I can very much understand, and I'm excited for more details, obviously, if this is confirmed by either company. Because I will say, as far as like the AI world, I feel like there's the obvious leaders that are like the Microsofts, the Alphabets. Apple's been criticized. Meta has just been, I'd say, more or so less interesting as far as like the AI trade has become as of late. So this is big. We'll have to obviously see if this happens, though, because typically I like to hear confirmation from either company before we know that it's for certain.
That's a fair point. I could see this happening, though, because it looks like Apple is beefing up how it operates within the Gen AI space through a partnership, because when you think back to the WWDC and its expansion into Gen AI, really a good chunk of that hinges on ChatGPT, or OpenAI rather, its relationship with OpenAI, ChatGPT. So I'm not surprised to see, yes, this is a report within the Wall Street Journal, so we'll await confirmation on this. We don't have confirmation yet, but I could see this being another piece of the puzzle with Apple playing catch up when it comes to Gen AI. And even when you think about kind of the cross currents facing Apple, you had one not so positive thing coming out of the EU, and then this report, it looks like in terms of the pre-market futures are flat for Apple. So I don't know if you're probably not old enough to remember this. There was a theme song that said, you take the good, you take the bad, and there you have the facts of life. So the facts of life for Apple leaves it range bound at the beginning of this market, but it's come a long way from its low earlier this year. Any final thoughts on Apple, Jenny?
Okay, so first of all, I do know that song actually, which is, it's rare that I know any like I'm not usually well versed in this area, but I do know that song. But I think that the Apple narrative has become more and more interesting because we focus so much on Nvidia. I mean, Nvidia has just dominated the gains, and frankly, like the momentum of Nvidia has been so much more astronomical than a name like Apple. But it's important to keep in mind, even though Nvidia has surpassed Apple as far as its market cap, Apple's still, the third most valuable company in the world at this point. It still has a massive influence on these overall markets. It just hasn't been that way this year. So if we start to see momentum in Apple pick up, I actually think that could be really interesting if what the bearish case in AI is saying, that we're going to see some things roll over with like the Nvidia. Hey, Apple has held up the market before. It's definitely capable of doing that again. Not saying that will be the case, but I just think it's important to keep in mind it's basically still the same size as Nvidia. Nvidia just takes all of the focus because it hasn't been Apple's year this far. But I'm excited for this now, this refresh, the iPhone cycle upgrade. We're expected to get this fall, as well as the AI features that are coming. I believe I do have the iPhone model that it will at least be adaptable with some of their new offerings. So I can't wait to see what that looks like, because I'm curious if it lives up to the hype per se.
Yeah, and two quick corrections, one on me, one on the market cap. So Apple, you probably didn't catch this one, Apple and Microsoft reclaimed their, leadership 1 and 2 positions. So Nvidia, with its slide at the end of last week, lost a little bit of that. So Apple's back at 3.18, Nvidia now 3.11 trillion. So nothing to sneeze at for either of them.
Right.
And then earlier, when I said low, I didn't mean like a low for Apple. I meant like it's lower level earlier this year in April, but it certainly made its way back from that. It hasn't had the growth trajectory that we've seen in Nvidia, to put it in that context. But Jenny Horne, fantastic insight on Apple and some headwinds and tailwinds for the company. Thank you, Jenny.